We have some high-profile cases that we need to talk about today. Talking specifically about Allison Mack, the woman, the former actress who was a Smallville actress involved in the NXIVM sex cult. So that was an interesting case. She got sentenced today, going to prison for some time. So we're going to talk about that. Then we've got to check in on Bill Cosby. Can you believe this? He is out of custody. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court just came out today and said that he's getting out of custody. There's a lot of issues with the underlying prosecution that took place. And so we're going to check in on that. We're going to take a look at the court order and see what happened there, because it was kind of a big surprise. Many people were not expecting this. And Bill Cosby's already out on Twitter. So we're going to take a look at what he had to say. So let's get into it. First, we're going to start off with Allison Mack. Here's Allison Mack. Remember her? We saw a lot about her a couple of years ago, but she's a former Smallville actress. She's sentenced to 3 years in prison. 3. Mack is required to have 3 years of supervised release after serving her prison term. Got to pay a $20,000 fine. So in her letter, which was submitted as part of the sentencing, she apologized. She says, "I'm sorry to those of you that I brought to NXIVM. I'm sorry I ever exposed you to the nefarious and emotionally abusive schemes of a twisted man." So if you're not familiar with this case, NXIVM was this cult. There was this guy called Keith Raniere. There's a Netflix series about this. Apparently what happened, long story short, is Keith Raniere was somebody who sort of was a cult-like figure, right? I mean, he's somebody who was extremely intelligent, allegedly. Apparently he was like the highest IQ in the world, something like this. There's a whole Netflix series about it. And a lot of people were following him. They were sort of believing in his message of giving them a better life and all of that stuff. Then it turned into this thing where he kind of had this upper echelon, this kind of hierarchy of followers, really. And it turned into this kind of weird sex cult thing where at the top, everybody needs to sleep with Keith Raniere. He's like a godlike figure. He's going to bring you enlightenment and blah, blah, blah. And then it turns into this like branding thing where they would actually go and brand these women on the inside of their thighs. Turns out that this like neat little symbol that was supposed to be some, deep, symbolic whatever, was Keith Raniere's initials. He just kind of, mashed the letters together to make this symbol. Oh, so he branded women with his initials on the inside of their thigh. Great. All right. So now the allegations, of course, were that Allison Mack, this actress, was somebody who is really helping facilitate all of this. So she's arrested in 2018 along with several other NXIVM leaders. And Keith Raniere was sentenced last year to 120 years in prison. She pled guilty to racketeering, also conspiracy charges, before Raniere's trial was scheduled to start. The sentencing guidelines recommended a range of 14 to 17 and a half years in prison, but prosecutors said they wanted a recommendation below the range because of substantial assistance she gave the government. Her attorneys asked for no prison time. They called Mack an essential accomplice, willing and proactive ally, but also said, I don't doubt that you were manipulated and also felt captive. So prosecutors requested a lesser sentence. CNN reached out to Mack that they didn't respond. NXIVM was a company in Albany. They had self-help classes. Prosecutors said that within the organization, there was this weird sort of sex ring that was going on. There was a group known as DOS that involved several women. They were first-line masters. They reported directly to Raniere. They recruited other women as their slaves. Unbeknownst to many of the women, Raniere was the head of the group. Women were at times directed to have sex with him and then send him nude photographs. So Mack has been under house arrest at her parents' home for the past 3 years. Attorneys said that she's gotten her associate's degree, community college, bachelor's degree program, worked as a caterer. And so 1 week before she pled guilty, she began to cooperate with the government. She shared details about the crimes and evidence, prosecutors said in their sentencing memo. One piece of evidence served as crucial during Raniere's trial, a recording of a conversation between Mack and Raniere in which the two discuss the, quote, branding ceremony. The person should ask to be branded, Raniere said. They should probably say that before they're held down, so it doesn't seem like they're being coerced. Another high-ranking member of DOS, somebody named Lauren Salzman, pled guilty to racketeering, also watched another woman writhe in pain during the branding ceremony, saying that she was squealing and screaming. Prosecutors said that if Mack had not cooperated, they would have not been able to present the recording against Raniere, where they discussed the brand. Another actress, several people were sort of involved with the case. And what happened here, it sounds like sort of like a free talk, right? the government flipped her. So they said, look, we can give you 14, 17 years in prison. Otherwise, you can help us. You can start giving us information that we're going to use to go and go after the real big guy, which is Keith Raniere. And that's a pretty common thing that happens in criminal cases. They do this all the time, often in cases involving, let's say, these cases can be very, very explosive. But if you have let's say a family and there's some child abuse going on. So you have a father, mother, daughter. There's some sort of child abuse happening. Oftentimes, you can really sort of tie liability to both parents, right? You can sort of tie it to the father, tie it to the mother. And sometimes this could be just, sort of physical abuse. Sometimes it could be sexual abuse. And what the government often does is they'll try to pit one parent against the other parent, right? And this can be very, very destructive, but also kind of a smart play for the government, right? If the father is the primary culprit, they may need the mom to incriminate the father, right? Because there's typically no other witnesses. You might have a young child that really can't testify all that much. So now what you have is, the government trying to sort of turn the mother against the father or vice versa. And it can be very, very destructive to the family. But of course, so is the child abuse, right? So you sort of are playing with a lot of very complicated moving parts. Same thing happened here, essentially. Now, of course, Allison Mack, I'm going to guess, doesn't have much love for Keith Raniere, so probably wasn't a hard sell. Probably just say, we're going to give you 15 years or 3, depending on what you do here. She goes, oh, here's my phone, whatever you need, here you go. That's all here. Now, her attorneys, of course, are going to be the people who facilitate this, right? She's not going to do a free talk without her attorneys. They're going to be the ones negotiating all of this, because if they didn't do it appropriately, maybe the government just says, thanks for your information. You're also getting 15 years. We're still mad at you. So you want to sort of negotiate those reductions. Sounds like her attorneys did something to that effect. And so that case is now coming to a close. Allison Mack is going into custody for 3 years. We have another high profile case. Of course, Bill Cosby is now out of custody. First thing he did, post on Twitter, got to correct the record. Saw this today. He says Bill Cosby, who has not been banned, Trump is still not allowed, but Cosby's back, says, I have never changed my stance nor my story. I've always maintained my innocence. Thank you to all my fans, supporters, and friends who stood by me through this ordeal. Special thanks to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court for upholding the rule of law. Right. And so he's got his fist raised over there, and he posted this picture and this right on Twitter first thing this afternoon. So we've seen that. It says here from the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania overturned the sexual assault conviction. So Cosby released from prison. Gone. He's out already, right? He's already on Twitter. Justices in the court, they ruled 83-year-old comedian who's only served 3 of his 10-year sentence had been denied a fair trial. Citing an agreement that was struck by a previous prosecutor, the justices said barred Cosby from ever being charged again. So it sounds like what happened here was there was a sort of a non-prosecution agreement. If you plead guilty to this, or you give us information about this, or you're cooperative in some way, we will not prosecute you. So there was some sort of agreement that took place there. Let's see what this says. Justice David Wecht, writing for the majority, said Montgomery County District Attorney was legally bound by that decade-old promise. So this happened some time ago. Should have never brought the charges when the new evidence surfaced. Okay, had an agreement not to prosecute you, decided to do that 10 years later. Court went back, said, no, that old agreement is still binding. You're not allowed to do that. So Cosby's conviction is now vacated. White said, the only remedy that comports with society's reasonable expectations of its elected prosecutors and our criminal justice system. The decision resulted in Cosby's release from the state. 2:30, he had been released today. News photographers, TV and camera people, they gathered in front of Cosby's estate in Elkins Park. He returned home. An hour later in a Subaru that was driven by an aide. The car stopped briefly. Spokesman Andrew Wyatt came to the front gate, reaching across, shaking hands, saying, we did it, and described the prosecution as ludicrous and racially motivated. Says we pulled the sheets off and America got the truth. Couple more slides here from the article before we get into the opinion from the judge. Says the case had been a complicated history that began in 2005. First reported the alleged assault, and the current district attorney, Bruce Castor, declined to file charges. Bruce, at the time, said he was not confident her allegations would hold up, but he maintained he struck the non-prosecution deal with Cosby to compel him to testify in a civil suit that she filed against him. Okay, so what happened is the old prosecutor, so we have this woman, she comes and complains to the county attorney there in Montgomery County. Bruce Castor is the county attorney, the district attorney there, and says, I don't think we can make a criminal case here. Okay, we can't actually convict him in a court of law because it's an old case. It's 10 years, however old it is, and we're not going to be able to hit that beyond a reasonable doubt standard. So in lieu of that, I know you're the victim of a crime. So here's what I propose. Rather than prosecuting him criminally, where I think as a prosecutor he's going to actually beat those charges. How about this? How about I negotiate with his lawyers, and what happens is we agree that we're not going to bring criminal charges against him, but he's going to agree that he's going to testify. He's going to give a deposition. He's going to talk to you in a civil suit. Okay, so now you can sue him for money, which is probably a prime motivator anyways, right? It's Bill Cosby. He's got a lot of it. So now what we have is Cosby saying, no problem at all. I'll happily talk to you in this deposition, provided that you don't bring charges against me, because he doesn't care about paying money. He just doesn't want to go to prison. So this agreement then gets signed. The victim, the woman who was allegedly involved in all of this, says that sounds fine to me. Don't bring charges. Bruce Castor signs off on with Cosby's attorneys. Deal's done. Cosby goes and testifies now, or gives his deposition. And then that opens up this whole can of worms. At the time, right, so no evidence has been presented that this agreement was ever memorialized in writing, but Castor had previously cited a news release he issued on the decision in 2005 as binding on all prosecutors who succeeded him, right? So they didn't actually enter into it, but he made it public. Castor then reopened the case, his successors, and charged Cosby in 2015, days before the 12-year statute of limitations expired, right? So there's a thing called the statute of limitations in the law. You are encouraged to bring your claims earlier rather than later, right? You don't want to sort of leave the window open forever so that somebody can come 20 years later and say, that time you punched me in the face, well, I'm having some medical problems as a result of that. I think that I'm going to sue you for that and collect damages because you punched me in the face 20 years ago in college. And you go, okay, that's fine. Sue me if you want to, but it's too old. There's nothing to sue for. You should have brought that claim years ago, long time ago, because we want to incentivize people to resolve their legal issues sooner rather than later. We don't want to let people wait around forever. So apparently here there was a 12-year statute of limitations. If they waited one more day, they couldn't bring those charges against Cosby. So they didn't. So the government just said, okay, well, we're running out of time here. So we know we had this sort of preceding agreement, but we are now going to just bring those charges and see what happens. Excerpts then from Cosby's deposition in the civil lawsuit, they were then used against Cosby at the trial. Okay, so we have that original deal. We say, we're not going to charge you, but you got to go testify in civil. He goes and testifies in the civil case, says something that incriminates him. Years later, they take those same statements and they come back and they charge him. And they say, well, we don't care about that prior deal that we had. We heard what you said in there. We're going to charge you with this stuff. And Cosby and his attorney say, but you just said that you wouldn't. And actually, you put it out there in public that you wouldn't do that. So that seems a little bit unethical. It seems a little bit dishonest, doesn't it? When a prosecutor makes an unconditional promise of non-prosecution, and when the defendant relies upon that guarantee to the detriment of his constitutional right not to testify, our criminal justice system demands that promise be enforced, says the judge. Castor testified as a defense witness in the hearings, said that he felt vindicated. Supreme Court has spoken. I don't feel any regret he got out. I don't feel any satisfaction that he got out. Others were not so neutral. We have Janice Baker Kinney, one of the 5 women to testify against Cosby, said that she was shocked by the Supreme Court ruling, I think along with everybody else. M. Stewart Ryan, one of the lead prosecutors who has since left, said that the ruling does not change that Cosby was found guilty, and he says he's going to stand by that. All right, so let's take a quick look here at what is happening in the court documents. Here's the opinion written here by Justice Wecht in the Supreme Court of the state of Pennsylvania, Middle District. The appeal from the order of the lower level court decided today, June 30th, 2021. In 2005, District Attorney Bruce Castor learned that Constant reported the assault in 2004. Okay, we've talked about that. Deputy prosecutor and other detectives, they investigated her claims. In evaluating the likelihood of success against Cosby, District Attorney saw difficulties with her credibility as a witness. based on her part on her decision not to file promptly, right? She filed this a long time ago, or 2004 and then 2005. So she delayed in the filing. So Castor then determined a prosecution would probably not win, said that certain claimants would be inadmissible under governing laws of evidence. The collective weight of these considerations led the district attorney to conclude that unless Cosby confessed, quote, there was insufficient credible and admissible evidence upon which any charge against Cosby related to the incident could be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay, so they put that in writing, and he's referencing that there in footnote number 1. Seeking some measure of justice, Castor decided that the Commonwealth would not prosecute Cosby for the incident as long as he testified under penalty of perjury without invoking the privilege against self-incrimination. Okay, we're not going to charge you criminally, but you can invoke the fifth. You got to go talk. He did that. Unable to invoke his right, he relied upon the declination to charge him, and then he went and gave 4 sworn depositions. During that time, he made incriminating statements. Obviously, we listened to those, right? Not on this channel, but we all heard those. Castor's successors did not feel bound by his decision, decided to prosecute Cosby anyways. The fruits of Cosby's reliance on Castor, the prior decision, was then used in his criminal trial. So the court allowed an appeal, and here's what they are concluding. We do not question whether prosecutors have discretion, but the discretion that we do give prosecutors does not mean that it can do whatever it wants without the constraints of due process. When unconditional charging decision is made publicly and with the intent to induce action, okay, they came out in this city and told everybody, we're not going to prosecute him because here's what we're doing. He's going to go testify. And then he did it. When an unconditional charging decision is made publicly, and then the defendant does something to his detriment, right, going and actually admitting things, then denying him the benefit of that decision is an affront to fundamental fairness, particularly when it results in criminal prosecution. Okay, it was foregone for more than a decade. They didn't prosecute him for a decade. No mere changing of the guard, switching prosecutors, changes that equation. Contrary result would be patently untenable, would violate long-cherished principles of fundamental fairness, be antithetical to, corrosive of integrity and the functionality of a justice system. Here we all so find, let's see here, we've got, for these reasons, convictions and judgment are vacated and discharged. They don't address any of the other issues. All right, so Cosby is a free man. Wow. All right. So let's take a look at some questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. If you want to support the show, we appreciate you doing so over there. We've got Want to Know says, so ADA have to tell the truth like they're officers of the court, but cops are totally allowed to lie to you. Did they release Cosby today because Trump at the border? USA has the best court system in the world money can buy. Good lawyers are quite helpful sometimes. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Cosby hired some good lawyers. Got a lot of money. He can do that. Was going to serve a 10-year sentence because he had good attorneys fighting for him, fighting. Going to save him 7 years of that time, right? And for the right reason, because these prosecutors, I'm not commenting on Cosby and what he did to these women, or whether he's an admirable guy or not. That's not even part of the question. The question is, did the prosecutors do what happened? The Supreme Court said they did. And what they did was unethical and totally inappropriate. And they should be sanctioned and reprimanded for that. Will they? No, of course not. Is Cosby gonna be able to go and recover any damages or money? Is he going to get 3 years of his life back for that? No, of course he won't. But at least he's out. Fortunately, he had some good attorneys that were able to get him through this. A lot of people don't have that. And a lot of the same garbage that you see here on a high-profile case like this happens every day with people all over the country. Every day, all over the country. Fortunately, Cosby had some resources. Most people don't. Sad state of affairs. Kareem says, yes, Canada was under lockdown, but it was not enforced. Ford asked the police to do random checks to see why people were outside, but the police refused to do that nonsense. I was wondering if you knew whether it was legal according to U.S. laws to work remotely while being in Miami. Oh, I see. So you were actually being serious. I thought you were joking. I don't know that candidly. If you're looking for sort of a legal answer on that, I just don't know what the answer is. I am not an international lawyer. I don't know what Canadian laws say about that, right? There's probably tax implications for that. If you're going to be living in Miami and sort of living as a U.S. citizen, I don't know what they say about you remitting money back. You'd probably need a visa or some sort of temporary work permit program, something in order to even be allowed to work here and U.S. laws. But I guess you'd be working for a Canadian company. I don't know, right? I don't know the answer to that. That is certainly outside of my wheelhouse. But whatever your answer is, I would certainly encourage you to come down here to Miami. I'm not in Miami, but I said come down here because I wish I was in Miami. Not in that building, though. Now, Gertjan says, so I guess Ghislaine Maxwell has nothing to worry about. Say sorry, pay some money, a little jail time. What is your opinion? Should we just let it go? No, I don't think so. Ghislaine Maxwell, we're due up for an update on her case. I've been getting a lot of activity notifications in her case, so we're going to have to do an update on her. But there's just so much going on there that it's hard to really figure out what's worth talking about. But no, I certainly don't think that we should just let it go. I think that Ghislaine Maxwell is somebody who's part of that sort of upper echelon power structure that exists. You know, her and Epstein got away with all sorts of debauchery and criminality for a long period of time. They were hanging around with some of the most powerful people in the world, Gates and the prince over in England and all sorts of stuff. And she's right in the middle of it. I want to know what's going on there. And I would love to really see what she knows. And so I think the pressure here is certainly justified. We also have Sharon Quidney says, this story is really sad. People who get involved with these cults are emotionally and physically abused and become subject to a type of hypnosis or Stockholm syndrome type of reaction. Yeah, you know, I hear that a lot, Sharon. I don't really know. I really don't think I have a strong opinion on this one way or the other. I mean, I know people can be manipulated. I know that people can be abused. You know, people can be very quick to, sort of disown people or be very judgy with people. They say, hey, Allison Mack is evil, or these women were stupid, or they were they should have known better, or how could anybody sort of allow themselves to get worked into a position like this? And, I think that's a little bit unkind. I think that people oftentimes find themselves in very difficult situations. We often find ourselves in difficult situations just on a day-to-day basis, right? Whether it's in a relationship or a work environment, or whether you've got, something, in your personal life that you're working through. We sort of oftentimes kind of find ourselves like, how did we get here? This is a little bit weird. Don't know how that happened. I should have seen the writing on the walls on this thing a long time ago, but for some reason, I didn't make the right decision. And so, you can easily see how people who are already vulnerable or maybe abused or maybe been traumatized or maybe, their parents were in cults or something like this. They've got a hole to fill, and you have people who are charlatans who will fill that hole for them, right? This is happening in a bizarre sort of sex cult environment. But we just went through this on a national scale. I mean, there are people, late night hosts and, choirs and things that are doing cartwheels and stuff and singing glory odes to Fauci, right? Very cultish behavior. So you can see how people sort of just get lumped into this stuff. If you create an environment where there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of stressors and people feel like they're sort of, cornered, people will do things that maybe they wouldn't ordinarily do. And I just like to have a little bit of sort of empathy for people in those positions. And there will always be a charlatan, some bureaucrat, somebody somewhere who says, listen, I know you're hurting right now, but I've got a solution for you. Here's what it is. All you got to do is just stay home for 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks. That's it. I know it's hard, but just 2 weeks. If you can just lock it up, 15 days to slow the spread, we're all going to be through this thing together. That's it. And you go, okay, fine, 15 days. No, that's no problem. We can do that. We can do 15 days. Okay, we can all do 15 days. 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 months, 1 year. And we're still sort of dealing with the consequences of this. So we've all been through it. And I said this on the Zoom meeting over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. 18 months ago, I would have never thought, that our government would lock us down in our own homes and mandate certain things for us. Never once would have thought that. And if I would have said that, people would go, you're a nut job. You're out of your mind. Are you nuts? This is America. That would never happen. And here we are. So the question is, how are we allowing ourselves to continue to be that frog in the hot water that is slowly reaching a boil? It's easy for us to look back on Allison Mack and say, wow, this is insane. What a lunatic. How could she possibly do this? And meanwhile, we're letting our own government do it to us on a daily basis. Like, oh, thank you. Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. We're not, I guess we shouldn't be scared anymore. Thank you, Dr. Fauci, for telling us what we should do. And then you've got late night hosts and you've got these choirs and everybody's very excited about it. Fauci, right? Singing these odes, praising glory be to the Fauci. You're going, this is insanity, but it happens very regularly. So it doesn't surprise me. All right. We've got Want to Know says, so can Cosby run for president now? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Did he grab him by the whatever? Maybe. Sounds like he did. I don't know. Three Girlies says, can Cosby now sue for his prison time? So I would absolutely think that he should, right? I think that absolutely that what happened was 3 years of his life were taken away from him based on a prosecutorial overzealousness, let's say. They made a deal with him and then they backtracked on that deal. There should be serious repercussions for that. I would file the claim as malicious prosecution or prosecutorial misconduct. I'm sure there's all sorts of ethical rules that have been violated. And I think that he should get monetary damages for their misconduct. Absolutely no question about it. And the Supreme Court seems like they concur with that. So we have I'm Not Gas says, I met Allison Mack when I was like 18. Oh, wow. I work under the assumption that anyone in Hollywood is either a victim, an abuser, or both. That's probably a pretty good policy. And, sometimes you probably wear multiple hats, right? You may be the victim who then turns into the abuser, which is sort of, I think, what the evolutionary path was for some of these NXIVM members. They were actually sort of working their way. They would start at a lower tier and then sort of elevate themselves up. And then you became Keith Raniere's right-hand person. And then you go in and recruited for him. And so it can be a very complicated undertaking there. Last up, we've got Speech Unleashed says, I never put anything past the federal government when the Dems are in control. Yeah, it's kind of a scary little thing there, isn't it? When you start to see kind of unbridled power. Limitless power, total monopoly, total control, and they can kind of just do whatever they want. So a lot of that conversation was happening today. I want to, we've got a couple more slides here. Before we end this segment, quick reminder, R&R Law Group is our law firm. We're located in Scottsdale, Arizona. If you or somebody you know or love needs help with a criminal case in the state of Arizona, we would love the opportunity to help. Our phone number is 480-787-0394. Or if you take a picture with your camera of this QR code, it will take you right over to our website. We also have some informational offerings if you want to learn anything. I would invite you to come take a look at this law enforcement interaction training. Also, I have an existence systems program. And if you're an attorney or somebody who's a legal professional, we are meeting tomorrow for the Legal Mastermind second call of the month. Oh, actually, it is the second call of June, even though tomorrow's July. I apologize. I had to reschedule, but it's taking place tomorrow. If you're a lawyer or a legal professional, be sure to check that out. And that is it for me, my friends. I want to thank you for joining us today on the program. We had a little bit of interesting technical problems with the Locals live stream. We're going to try to figure that out, trying to see how I can do that. If anybody has any suggestions, I'd be open to those. But I'm going to reach out to Locals. We'll get that figured out. And we'll be back here at the same time, same place tomorrow. Hope to see you here. We're going to be back here at 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And for that one Florida man, everyone else, enjoy your evening. Be very well, rest well, sleep well, eat well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.